the media and not just reporting on the news, but making news. And as I've said often, we now have a watchdog for us on the media. Didn't used to be that way, but it has been since creation of Media Matters for America. President Bradley Beychok from Media Matters joining us in studio this morning. Hey, Bradley, nice to see you.
Hey, how are you?
All right, good to see you, and thanks for coming in, and thanks for all your good work as well. Let's start with Ted Nugent. I mean,
let's.
Yeah, right. I guess first of all, maybe the first question: why does anybody take him seriously? And but you've been all over the fact. I mean, this guy's a history of outrageous statements, right?
He does. I mean, it goes back to his one of his most famous rallies in 2007, where he called Hillary Clinton, Barbara Boxer, many others, words that can't necessarily be repeated over the radio, but that he was very adamant about. He's one of these fringe right-wing figures that you wonder when is their day sort of past, and he's someone that we would have thought would have ridden out into the sunset by now. But, due to the sort of conservative nature of the Republican Party right now, he's still on the board at the NRA. He still writes for WorldNet Daily Online, a primary birther site. And he still is an ambassador for the Outdoor Channel, so it has some sort of public television or cable television role. And he's had a history of making these inflammatory remarks. And, last week was a good example of what happens when Republicans sort of wake up a month later and think, gee, this guy may be problematic for us. As his remarks on Obama were not new.
Right.
They were not. They weren't yesterday. They were a month old.
Oh, the subhuman mongrel. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But he didn't really apologize.
No, absolutely not. So on I guess to back up, the controversy was based around him calling Obama a subhuman mongrel. He made those remarks on January 17th on guns.com, where they posted at a trade show they do called the SHOT Show, a interview of him, and it's in its entirety. They did a write-up on the interview, and they miraculously happened to miss this because they thought, let's not include it. Right, who would want to know? So we wrote about it on January 21st, defining what a mongrel was, a dog with parents of different breeds, the different connotations. And it got some media pickup for that next 2 days. And so, you go 3-4 weeks go by, and when we saw that Abbott was going to campaign, we wanted to put a best of Ted Nugent clips together, and we did so. And it got a lot of pickup, and rightly so. He needs to be called out for being a hate monger, for being...
So you caught it early on, but nobody else had. Yeah,
a month early.
That's why it's important that you're there. And then he goes out campaigning with Greg Abbott, and I mean, others have said no. I mean, not in very strong terms. Like Rick Perry says, "Well, these are not words I would have used,"
right?
That kind of stuff. But Greg Abbott hasn't apologized or hasn't distanced himself at all from Ted Nugent, right?
No, and Greg Abbott looked a little shell-shocked about the whole thing. He said his first answer was, I know that Ted's a defender of the Constitution, and I'm proud to have him here today. So he was a little, I think, taken aback in terms of what they were getting themselves into and the firestorm. And this is something we see a lot in the media, where depending on what you see every morning on the cable networks, when something sort of catches fire and there's someone as what's the right word, vibrant or lively as Nugent,
toxic
is
the word I would use. Yeah,
it can really go, and so I think it caught a lot of media coverage. And in the next few days, we actually saw something that was sort of interesting. CNN covered this controversy for 37 minutes around they interviewed Nugent on numerous times, sort of as an exclusive. MSNBC covered it for 13 minutes, and Fox covered it a big whopping 0. So we looked at that on just the February 18th and 19th and their coverage. Eventually, they finally covered it by the end, but it was more when the Republicans, as you said, Rand Paul said, you should have to apologize. That's when they stepped in.
So this 37 minutes with CNN, was that over a day-long period or just one?
It was February 18th of
all
all
their different shows. That's the
right.
total amount of time that they put into it.
That's right.
Wow. And Fox didn't even.
Fox, they waited till Paul and others. I mean, Rand Paul was the first one to sort of throw him under the bus a little bit and say that he should have to apologize. And I don't know. Paul's been very quirky lately about getting into the news with taking old statements and trying to make them new, or making statements that he thinks people would pick up on television. In this case, it seems that he wanted to make a little news and see if
you mentioned Fox. I just saw some clip somewhere, all the reading that I do. It was online about the latest cable ratings for the month of February. Fox is still way out in front. CNN
having a tough time
in a slide, really, and MSNBC maybe barely holding its own. But even compared to last year, Fox's ratings keep getting higher and higher, not just in total viewers, but in that key demographic of 18 to 34. Why?
It's a good question. I mean, they run put the content aside. Roger Ailes runs a good news organization that is, for us, is a propaganda machine. So they run a very strong propaganda machine as a network, and they have a formula that they get more viewers. We think that defining Fox as a propaganda machine is a real key pillar of this. To having other folks be skeptical of what they hear or see from Fox News is really important. And we'll continue to sort of call them out as their audience may grow. Now, as their audience grows, it also causes political problems, I think, for them. Because they start to talk, the conservatives start to talk to only themselves. So you have a Ted Cruz or Ted Nugent or Rand Paul go on to Fox, and they really believe that that's the dialogue that goes on in normal America. And I think that they're faced with a stark different reality when they leave the confines of those studios. So their viewership has certainly increased. I think their influence has decreased, and I know it sounds a little weird that their audience would go up, but their influence would go down. I believe that to be true.
Now, I noticed that you brought with you a copy of a column that I wrote yesterday for the Hill newspaper, because my beef with the media these days is that the media is spending too damn much time talking about 2016. Every day there's a new poll about Hillary versus Christie, Hillary versus Ted Cruz, Hillary versus whatever. First of all, we don't know that she's going to run. I think she will. We don't know she's going to be the candidate. If she runs, she will. But we also, these polls today are just totally meaningless about 2016. Why is this obsession? Is it just because they're so lazy, it's so easy to do, or because people really want to hear about that?
I guess it's a little of both. I share your frustration, certainly as someone that watches network television all day and monitors online news.
Yeah, right.
I have a great affinity for President Clinton, and yesterday I saw him on my television a lot simply as a campaign stop in Kentucky, which he's done hundreds of over the course of years.
That was, that's what he does, and that was legitimate. That is a race that's taking place this year, a very important race, and he's having a role in it. Now, some people may try to spin that, well, he's just out there paving the way for Hillary, but I mean, you can't avoid that. But that was a legitimate campaign stop yesterday.
No, it is.
Worth reporting on.
It is. And then you have, they report on these polls, which, as you said, I think are meaningless. There's a lot of coverage around Secretary Clinton's speeches as she travels the country to different trade associations. I mean, the amount of coverage that it got that she hadn't driven a car in a while and how many years that could have been at the auto dealers seemed preposterous with what we have going on in the world at the time. And just take aside for a second all of the real, the political races that are up here in 2014. So I couldn't agree. The appetite for anything sort of Clinton and 2016 related, whether unfortunately it's mostly I think on our side right now because we're the most well defined, is greater than we expected, and it doesn't seem to be getting any less. So we're going to have to. I agree with you that we have to find ways to focus this into positive energy into 2014 because we have a real uphill climb here looking at us in 251 days.
No, right. No, absolutely. And I do think it's a laziness for the most part on the part of producers and on the part of reporters because, first of all, 2016, that's the big enchilada. That's the White House, right? and just focus. By the way, these stories started on November the 9th, 2012, right?
Well, I mean, they
didn't start this year. Right away, as soon as Obama was reelected,
they build segments around, oh, is she too old? Like,
right.
Oh, is this going to be the last shoe? Oh, that's a really thing to build a segment around. And people are going to come, and you can get folks to come talk about it. But is that really, how long can we listen to this for the next 2 years?